Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mishtapad Paramahansa Padavadikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavadikacharya Ashtotar that Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavini Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktabinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, I guess I have to go back in the back there. Are you going to go back?
I was going to class and get with it.
Yeah, go in the back and tell them that they should try to be quiet. They probably have this door to the altar open. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 28th day of May 2019 in SanDiego, reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are on page 210. 210. This is in chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, text number 24. Okay. Brahmapanam Brahmahavi Brahmagnam Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina Brahmapanam Brahmahavi Brahmagnam Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina Brahmapanam Brahmahavi Brahmagnam Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina Brahmapanam Brahmahavi Brahmagnam Brahmanahutam Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahmakarma Samadhina. Okay. Brahmapanam Brahmahavi Brahmagnau brahmanahutam brahmayavatena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. Prabhu, can you chant? Brahmapanam brahmahavir. Page 210. Go ahead. Brahmagno brahmanahutam brahmayanatena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. All right, we're going to wait for Parashakti. Page 210. 210. Everyone else has chanted. Unless you want to try. You want to try? Go ahead. Brahmapanam brahmahavi Brahmagnau brahmanahutam Brahmayavatena gantavyam Brahma karma samadhina. Parashakti. Brahmapanam brahmahavi Brahmagnau brahmanahutam Brahmayavatena gantavyam Brahma karma samadhina. Word by word meanings. Brahma, spiritual in nature. Arpanam, contribution. Brahma, the supreme. Havihi, butter. Brahma, spiritual. Agnau, in the fire of consummation. Brahmana, by the spirit soul. Hutam, offered. Brahma, spiritual kingdom. Eva, certainly. Tena, by him. Gantavyam, to be reached. Brahma, spiritual. Karma, in activities. Samadhina, by complete absorption. Translation. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Purport. How activities in Krishna consciousness can lead one ultimately to the spiritual goal is described here. There are various activities in Krishna consciousness, and all of them will be described in the following verses. But for the present, just the principle of Krishna consciousness is described. A conditioned soul, entangled in material contamination, is sure to act in the material atmosphere, and yet he has to get out of such an environment. The process by which the conditioned soul can get out of the material atmosphere is Krishna consciousness. For example, a patient who is suffering from a disorder of the bowels due to overindulgence in milk products is cured by another milk product, namely curds. The materially absorbed conditioned soul can be cured by Krishna consciousness, as set forth here in the Gita. This process is generally known as yajna, or activities, sacrifices, simply meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu or Krishna. The more the activities of the material world are performed in Krishna consciousness, or for Vishnu only, the more the atmosphere becomes spiritualized by complete absorption. The word Brahma, Brahman, means spiritual. The Lord is spiritual, and the rays of his transcendental body are called Brahma Jyoti, his spiritual effulgence. Everything that exists is situated in that Brahma Jyoti. But when the Jyoti is covered by illusion or maya, or sense gratification, it is called material. This material veil can be removed at once by Krishna consciousness. Thus, the offering for the sake of Krishna consciousness, the consuming agent of such an offering or contribution, the process of consumption, the contributor, and the result are, all combined together, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. The Absolute Truth, covered by Maya, is called matter. Matter, dovetailed for the cause of the Absolute Truth, regains its spiritual quality. Krishna consciousness is the process of converting the illusory consciousness into Brahman, or the Supreme. When the mind is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, it is said to be in samadhi or trance. Anything done in such transcendental consciousness is called yajna, or sacrifice for the Absolute. In that condition of spiritual consciousness, the contributor, the contribution, the consumption, the performer or leader of the performance, and the result or ultimate gain, everything becomes one in the Absolute, the Supreme Brahman. That is the method of Krishna consciousness. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandjana shalakaya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai shri gurave namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So there's a lot of mystery in this verse. It's a little difficult to understand, but let's explore it. So first, as always, we look at the context, and Krishna in these verses, this passage, he's describing how one who is living in the material world and acting, but is acting in such a way that everything he or she does is a sacrifice. The motive, the central point of that activity, is not the usual motive in this material world, which is some kind of subtle or gross benefit, so-called benefit for oneself. In other words, this is called false ego. We've heard of the false ego. We have ego. Everyone has a sense of self. Even the animals have a sense of self. But in material consciousness, in illusion, we're identifying with what we're not. It's a big mistake. Namely, we're identifying with this body or this mind or a combination of such. But we learn, right in the 7th chapter, and actually in the 2nd chapter, we learn in summary, that the self, the Atman, the soul, we ourselves, are different from this covering, this body. Prabhupada compared it to a shirt and coat. Or now it's a little cool, so we have a shawl or you have a sweatshirt or something. And then you have your inner a jacket or coat or covering, and then your body itself. So the external body is compared to the external garments. And the internal body, what we call the subtle body of mind and intelligence and ego, which is also not us, that's compared to the inner garment. So everybody in the material world, in this material consciousness, is identifying with that gross and subtle body. And along with that, you have certain relationships with others who are very much like you. They're close to you, your immediate family, you identify them, we came from the same father, mother, whatever. Or they're part of the same community, they speak the same language, born in the same rough area. This is also part of that identification. So there's a very dramatic verse that Krishna himself speaks in the 10th canto. Actually, he's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, not before the war, but when there is a solar eclipse occurs, and then he travels to that Kurukshetra, and so do the residents of Vrindavan, and he meets them after a long, long separation. It's very dramatic. But he's in the role there of a householder. He has many, many queens, over 16,000. They all come, and the children. It's quite an entourage. And so while he's there, his father, Vasudeva, is also there, And these great sages come, and Vasudeva greets them, and he asks them about the absolute truth. And they're first dumbfounded and say, wait a minute, the absolute truth is right next to you. It's Krishna. But Vasudeva is in the mood of a father to Krishna. Krishna's a household who's got all these queens and everything. So Krishna himself takes on the role of a conditioned householder in that point. He speaks this verse, and he's asking the sages to please enlighten us, attached householders, about the absolute truth. So he speaks this verse that many people don't understand the context. Yas yatma buddhi kunape tridhatuke swadi kalatradish bhomi ijjadi yat tirtha buddhi saline nakarhichit janesha bigyesha eva gokara. Now the word gokara can mean two things. It can mean a cow or a donkey. Or it can mean the donkeys that carry the straw or hay for the cows. So let's consider it that. But in either case, it's an animal. So what he's saying there, he gives a list. First he says, yasyatma buddhi. In other words, buddhi, or other words in this verse, mean having the mentality of, you see, thinking of. So one who thinks that I, the Atma, the self, yasyatma buddhi, is kunape tridatake, is synonymous with this bag, kind of a bag, of the body, filled with the three dhatus. This is the Ayurvedic term. Mucus, bile, and air. Now we don't often think that I'm just a conglomeration of mucus, bile, and air in a bag. We don't think like that, but actually that's the content if we're just identifying with this body. So if you think like that, you're the donkey who carries the straw. This is your equivalent. They're not very smart. Svadi. Now the next thing is, that's me. Then there's the mine. These are the two elements of illusion. I am this body, and what's in relation to the body is mind. And so the next line deals with that. Svadi kalatradishu, that's the thing. So kalatra means wife, and etc. So generally, you get married, then there's children, then you have to worry about money, there's a place, there's a job, and then there's an extended family. That's called kalatra adi. So that's mine. That's this is my wife, this is my child, this is my relative, this is my bank balance, this is my house, this is my job, this is my. That also, it's in relationship to it begins with the false identity with the self and expands. So that's also donkey consciousness. Then he talks about Boma ijidi. This is a very important phrase. Boma in this context means most prominently the land where you're born. Boma means like bhumi. Bhumi is the earth land. So the land where you're born is worshipable. This is the nationalism. It all goes back to the body. Where the body is born, the language I speak, the place I occupy, this is worshipable. You see a similar distortion of this in extremists. Someone is born and raised in, say, New York. So not only is, I'm a New Yorker, so forget about it, but I'm a fan of the New York Yankees and New York Giants and New York Knicks and all the other. In other words, I identify with this place. Oh, go, this is me. Then you go and there's all these other people. This is part of Boma Ijidi. Then you move. Things happen. You go to Los Angeles. Okay, forget about New York. Now I'm an Angelino, right? Los Angeles Rams or whatever else, the Los Lakers, In other words, you identify with that area and the people who are identifying, and this leads further and further into illusion, so more donkey consciousness. Then he talks about how you may go on pilgrimage, but when you go, because this is classic in India, but when you go on pilgrimage, say you go to Vrindavan or you go to Varanasi or something like that, Benares, you just take a bath. Wherever these places of pilgrimage are almost always associated with a river of some kind, Yamuna River, Ganges River, like that. So you take the bath in the river, and then you give a little donation at the temple, and you go home. And that's your pilgrimage. Rather than searching out the persons of knowledge there and hearing from them. You see? Yatirtha buddhi salile nakarcha janeshu abhigeshu. So these are different ways in which one can be an illusion about who one is and relationships between what one has. So what Krishna has been talking about in this passage in the 4th canto is how to work in such a way on the basis of our real identity to cure oneself of the illusory self-consciousness and work in such a way that one is freeing oneself from the results of that false consciousness, which is karma, good and bad karma. Because when we act on the basis of false identification, we act what would probably call fruitively, either for our personal self or for those who we identify with as ours. Both of those are fruitive activity, and that keeps us bound tightly within this material world of birth and death. So the whole idea here, this transcendental knowledge, and the previous chapter, Karma Yoga, is to work on the basis of knowledge, not on the basis of illusion and ignorance. And so that the basic principle is jagya, sacrifice. Now jagya just doesn't mean sacrifice, it also means Vishnu. So working on the basis of sacrificing for Vishnu. And in this way, freeing oneself from bad karma. So this is a kind of a culmination verse here. Brahmapanam Brahmavir. If one works in that consciousness on the basis of sacrifice for the Supreme Brahman, who is Krishna, the Supreme Absolute Truth, then everything one does is spiritual. It may look just like material activities. Someone walks in here and they find one of our devotees sweeping the floor. Says, oh, they're doing what they're doing down the street in the bar. I saw them sweeping the floor. What's so spiritual about that? The difference is the consciousness in which it is done. The devotee sweeping the floor, he's chanting Hare Krishna. He's not thinking of his paycheck, which there isn't any. He's just sweeping the floor, thinking of the deities behind the curtain, maybe, and chanting Hare Krishna, and not incurring any karma, and pleasing Krishna and his spiritual master, and paving his way back to Godhead. In other words, freeing oneself from the bondage of illusion and ignorance. And besides that, there's a certain spiritual pleasure in doing that. It's similar to we find the pleasure in the material world of sacrificing oneself for the benefit of others. They've done so many studies about who is the happiness, what's the real happiness quotient, what makes people really happy. And again they find that people who work for others, simple thing that maybe just their good part of their life is in trying to help the homeless or trying to help poor kids who are orphans or something like that. They have a certain inner joy and happiness. They have a mission in life that people who might be millionaires and are simply trying to enjoy this, enjoy that, don't have. There's a real misery. There's an actual void in the hearts of someone whose whole life is simply built on selfishness. It leads to mental illness, because the natural mood of the Atma is to work for the benefit of Krishna, because we're part and parcel of Krishna. It's just like what is the perfection of the hand? Well, it's in good health, and it does what I want, right? And the classic case, all right, we're eating something, some prasad. I'm taking prasad, like this. So the hand is benefiting. It's putting the food in the stomach. It's not tasting it separately. But it gets nourished by the digestion and everything, and the hand is nicely situated. There's a story, I forget the Bengali or Sanskrit, but the gist is the senses go on strike. This is the title of the the senses go on strike. So if you think about it, the senses are all working for the benefit of the stomach. The feet are walking to the job, right? The hands are doing so many things. The eyes are looking and working and everything. But they're not enjoying. They get the paycheck is given, and you go to the grocery store and you prepare something, some food, and you eat it, and the stomach enjoys, But the hands don't directly enjoy it, and the eyes, we're working so hard for the benefit of the stomach, we're going on strike. So they stopped doing their functions, you see. But gradually there was no food entering into the mouth, and they got weak because they're not benefiting. So they realized that their health and happiness is in serving the benefit of the stomach. So this analogy is actually right out of the Srimad Bhagavatam, where it says, Yata tado mula nishecharena tripyanti tatskanda bujo bhashaka prano bahara chayatendriyaram tataiva sarvahanamacchateja. Now it's interesting that the last line of this verse refers to the Devas, because the Devas, as explained in the third chapter, there's a kind of a cycle of sacrifice. We have to, anad bhavanti bhutani, just on very practical terms. In order to live, we have to eat anna. Anna means grain, okay? Now, for grain to grow, there needs to be rain, right? But for rain to come, there needs to be the blessing of the Devas, especially Indra. So therefore, there has to be sacrifice. But what defines sacrifice? Oh, that's in the Vedas, the Karma Kanda. But where do the Vedas come from? The Vedas come from Krishna. He speaks the original Vedas, and it enters Brahma, so therefore, the whole thing goes back to Krishna. If one satisfies Krishna, if one is worshipping, then everything else is taken care of. The Devas will very obediently, show prosperity for one. This is what the meaning of, what is this place? New Govardhan. So it commemorates the Govardhan Leela, Krishna lifting that hill. What was one of there was many things that happened with that lift, but the most obvious thing that he was doing was showing that you don't have to worship Indra. The worst he can do is throw down this rain. I'm going to stop with my little pinky. Just come on under the hill. No problem. You see? Don't worry about it. You worship the hill, which is not different from me. Worship the cows and honor the Brahmins and worship me, and everything will be fine. That's it's a very critical point that in Bhakti Yoga you don't worship any other devas for some benefit. You can worship them and pray for love for Krishna. That the gopis did. They worship the Durga in form of Katyayani. Please may Krishna be my husband. That's another mood. But we don't worship the other day. We worship Krishna, the root of all. That's what this verse says. Just as watering the root of a tree feeds all the branches and the twigs and the flowers and the fruits of the tree. You don't have to go and water separately. And you can't. That's improper. The tree will die. A root. Just as feeding the stomach feeds all the senses. Similarly, worshipping Krishna pleases all the devas because they're part of the whole bureaucracy, you know. And it was shown by King Yudhishthira and his kingdom and King Pariksit and others in the Bhagavatam that when you have a very pious king, a Rajarshi, one who's not only a Raj but also a Rishi, meaning a devotee, a learned devotee, Ram Raja, you know, you've heard this is very famous. When God is king or a godly king is king, then the society flourishes. People are very happy. Because the king is not just out there to exploit his kingdom and make as much money and exploit the people. He's actually caring about the benefit of the people. Just as Krishna is, as he says in this chapter. I come, why does he take the trouble to come here? He's happy in the spiritual world, but he takes the trouble to come here and fight with all these demons, you know, and in order to reinstitute Dharma and help us to have a dharmic kingdom or a government for our benefit. And then he goes back. So he's left this Bhagavad Gita, and here this particular verse says, when you're in this consciousness of always thinking of Krishna and sacrificing for him, free of material desire, as we've described, satisfied with what comes easily of its own accord, because your nourishment is spiritual nourishment is coming from within. Then this is what happens. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir. Everything you offer, your activities, it all gets burned up in the fire of sacrifice. It's all spiritual. Ideally, as I gave this verse to you, I think last night in the 11th canto, Kayena Bacha Manasindriyava Buddhyatmanaba Nusabhavadat. That this is the platform of fearlessness and perfection. Everything you do with your body, with your words, with your mind, with your senses, with your intelligence, with yourself, everything that we all have these in varieties of these that we've gotten through our karma, whatever we have. Then whatever we do with all of them, we feel, oh, this is a sacrifice for Narayan. Now, tat karma sang I forget the third line, but it says Narayanati Samarpayetat. This is for you, Narayan. This is the meaning of this Hare Krishna movement. Is that Srila Prabhupada set it up so one could actually join, those of you who actually join full time, so that everything you do, you can feel, oh, I'm doing this for Krishna. You know, you go back to the early days in the storefront. Those who are working full time, okay, they're putting together Back to God magazine, going out on Harinam, glorifying the Lord, and then eventually the books came, distributing books. So it's possible to live a life so that everything you're doing from when you wake up in the morning till you take rest is doing something for Krishna. You remember those old days? Were you there in Brooklyn? Or yeah. It was like a full program, a morning and evening program. When I started, I was working 3 hours, I think, in the morning, filling these little bottles of fragrant oils. It's part of the incense business, the spiritual sky incense. There was an incense department, and we had these fragrant oils, And so I'm doing all this. And, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing the tapes, Prabhupada speaking, and everything. And then there would be a nice lunch, 1 o'clock or whatever, it was 1:30. And we went on Harinam and go out of Fifth Avenue and, jump up and down, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare. I mean, that's obviously sacrifice, You come back You know, it's 6 o'clock, you're a little tired, that's okay. And then you get ready for the evening program, the kirtan. Everyone comes, we had 60, 70 devotees in the temple. And all beautiful kirtan, a song glorifying, remembering Lord Chaitanya being worshipped on the bank of the Ganges. Ki bhajayo jaya Gaura Chandra. You know, and jumping up and down, dancing, and then sitting, and then Bhagavad Gita class. That was another part of it. And then after Bhagavad Gita class, hot milk, you know, sweet hot milk, and listen to Krishna book. Take rest. Get up in the morning, start over again. That was the day. So after, you know, doing that for some time, you know, your material life kind of fades in the background, you know. A lot of attachments and things just kind of go away. And that was the movement Prabhupada started. And it's exactly like this, Brahmaparnam Brahmahavir. You know, the devotees who were going, when I first came, I remember Bhakti Tom, you know, well, what are you going to do? You remember Bhakti Vinod? You remember Bhakti Vinod? He was the temple commander, black body devotee. You know, he got initiated shortly after I came. Huh? Yes, he was a cook. He was a great cook also. And so he engaged me. Okay, Bhakti Tom, it's time to take out the trash. And we had a lot of trash. We had about 100 devotees living in there. So I'm taking out the trash, you know, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, you know, a couple of times. And then he said, I think you're going to make it, Bhakti Tom. You know, you're going to... And there was plenty of, you know, cleaning the stool room, you know, cleaning the bathroom and everything. But it was all good. You know, it was a Brahmaparnam Brahmahavir. Doesn't matter if you're dressing the deity or sweeping the floor or taking out the trash. It's all for Krishna. That's how you can understand this verse. So to make one's life a sacrifice for Vishnu is actually perfection. And you know, and thinking that, oh my God, you know, what about all my, you know, this other stuff that you realize that what's really important, you know, you can live pretty simply, but what's really important is to have meaning in your life and to be connected with Krishna. That's the yoga, primarily through the sound, but also through your activities of all the other senses. And that's what's described here. Samadhina. This is samadhi, kind of samadhi. Any discussion on this verse? Maybe I went a little far afield. All right, should we go on? So then he's going to talk about all these different kinds of sacrifices of different persons. Daivameva pare yagyam yogina paryupasate brahmagna vapare yagyam yagyenaiva upajuvati. Wow, we've got yagya appearing 3 times in this one verse. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman. Purport as described above. A person engaged in discharging duties in Krishna consciousness is also called a perfect yogi or a first-class mystic. But there are others also who perform similar sacrifices in the worship of the demigods, and still others who sacrifice to the Supreme Brahman or the impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord. So there are different kinds of sacrifices in terms of different categories. Such different categories of sacrifice by different types of performers only superficially demark varieties of sacrifice. Factually, sacrifice means to satisfy the Supreme Lord Vishnu, who is also known as Jagya. This comes out in the 3rd chapter too. All the different varieties of sacrifice can be placed within 2 primary divisions, namely, sacrifice of worldly possessions and sacrifice in pursuit of transcendental knowledge. Those who are in Krishna consciousness sacrifice all material possessions for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, while others, who want some temporary material happiness, sacrifice their material possessions to satisfy the demigods, such as Indra, the sun god, etc. And others, who are impersonalists, sacrifice their identity by merging into the existence of impersonal Brahman. The demigods are powerful living entities appointed by the Supreme Lord for the maintenance and supervision of all material functions like the heating, watering, and lighting of the universe. Those who are interested in material benefits worship the demigods by various sacrifices according to the Vedic rituals. They are called Bhav Ishvara Vadi, or believers in many gods. Bhav means Bahu, many Ishvars. But others, who worship the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth and regard the forms of the demigods as temporary, sacrifice their individual selves in the supreme fire and thus end their individual existences by merging into the existence of the Supreme. Such impersonalists sacrifice their time in philosophical speculation to understand the transcendental nature of the Supreme. In other words, the fruitive workers sacrifice their material possessions for material enjoyment, whereas the impersonalist sacrifices his material designations with a view to merging into the existence of the Supreme. For the impersonalist, the fire altar of sacrifice is the Supreme Brahman, and the offering is the self being consumed by the fire of Brahman. The Krishna-conscious person, like Arjuna, however, sacrifices everything for the satisfaction of Krishna, and thus all his material possessions, as well as his own self, everything is sacrificed for Krishna. Thus he's the first-class yogi, but he does not lose his individual existence. So, the principle of sacrifice here can be used by different persons, but those who sacrifice for something other than Vishnu, other than the pursuit of perfection, of love of Krishna, they find that they don't achieve what they're looking for. So especially these impersonalists. The impersonalists, you may recall that in text 10 of this chapter, there's a long purport describing the different obstacles that there are to surrender to Krishna. It's Vita, Raga, Bhaya, Krodha, Manmaya, Mamapashita. Krishna says, being free from attachment, fear, and anger, many souls in the past became purified by austerity and by worshipping me, and thus they attained pure love for me. So being free from attachment, fear, and anger. But that attachment, raga, and bhaya, fear, and krodha, anger, can be great obstacles in surrendering to Krishna. And he goes through, and one of the obstacles is fear. That's for the impersonalists. The impersonalists, they look around and they say, well, there's no use in just working for material things and trying to, because it's all temporary. And that just keeps you bound in this world with these it's called gridya grunti, the knots in the heart. So that much they understand, that this world is illusory, that it's a fool's errand to try to establish some permanent situation of happiness or security here. So they understand that. So do the bhaktas, the Vaishnavas. But their solution is to try to end their material existence. And the reason is presented in this purport is that they logically conclude that material activity, which includes activities of the senses and engaging in this and the subtle activities of the material mind, this is what keeps us bound here. As soon as we enjoy something with the senses, this plants a desire seed in the heart so that we want to do it again. This principle is very obvious in addiction, right? Gross addiction to drugs or something, or alcohol or something like that, right? You don't start out, drinking alcohol or drinking some beer in order to get addicted and become an alcoholic and ruin your liver and suffer. That's not the idea. That's the byproduct. That's the unfortunate result. You want to enjoy with your friends, and I can control it. I'm good, but you're not good. If you keep doing it, you'll get addicted. So that's exactly what happens in any sense gratification we enjoy. It plants a subtle desire seed. You want to do it again and again and again, and that carries over to the next life. You die, and your subtle body goes on. You got so many ideas and so many desires in there, and that serves as a template for your next body. You got to get something to try to fulfill those unfulfilled desires. This is one way of looking at the science of transmigration. So the impersonalists understand that, so do we. But their solution is to void it out, meaning that form, body, personality equal suffering for them. They don't accept the idea of a spiritual body, spiritual activities that are wholesome and that don't produce misery. That's their mistake. They're afraid of having a form again, fear, bhaya. And so they try to stop all thought and try to merge into Brahman. But that's unnatural for the soul. We are persons, eternally, spiritual persons. Now we have this material form, which is artificial. And that's not really us. That's the big mistake. So we have a means by which we use this very artificial form that's not natural for us in such a way that we get free of it. The example of taking out a thorn with a thorn, or more obviously, you get a splinter. When I was, did you ever hear I tell my story when I was a kid? We had wooden floors. And of course, I'm running around on the floor of a little apartment, and I eventually get a splinter. Mom, can I borrow your sewing needle? Because in those days people would sew. You didn't have an electric, So I said, sure, Tommy, here. So I find that needle, and I do it in such a way that it doesn't hurt practically. You can dig in and dig it out. And I got and put it out, put a little Band-Aid on, and I'm running around. Or I get my foot, I said. So the needle is just another splinter. One splinter is taken out. Similarly, the body, which is our source of attachment here, we got so many conditionings, pertaining to habits of the body, can be used to get free of the body. In other words, to cultivate a consciousness in which we're not identifying with the body, but using it as a tool for serving Krishna. And eventually, when we leave the body, we continue because our desire is not to enjoy the body, but to serve Krishna. So we get our spiritual body. We rediscover our spiritual eyes, ears, mind, senses, and everything. And we burst forth in the spiritual sky in the form of, who knows? Each one of us has our own body. Coward boy, coward girl, cow, They're all equally conscious there. That's the idea. So, but the impersonalists don't have that. They're averse to serving Krishna. That's the deep-seated thing. They want to be Brahman themselves. And so, the Bhagavatam says, Yenjeta vindaksha vimukta maninas tvayasta bhavad avishuddha buddhaya aruha kritrena param padang tata patantyadho anadvita yushmadangriya. He says, this is the demigods praying to Krishna in the womb before he's even born. He's in the womb of Devaki. And so all the demigods come secretly and to the dungeon, they're in the corner, and they're praying these wonderful prayers. They're in the 2nd chapter of the 10th canto. And this is the most famous one Prabhupada would quote. It says, besides the bhaktas, others, Anye, O lotus-eyed Lord, there are those who are averse to worshipping your lotus feet. Vimukta, and they think they're liberated by performing severe austerities. Just try to imagine what it means. The basic principle is we've got to detach these senses and this mind from the material world. But if you just sit in a room quietly and say, I'm detached, I don't want anything. But there's all these desires, these latent desires. Your mind is going to feel, I got to go here, I got to go there. What about my rent? Come on, can't just sit here. In other words, you have these attachments. So the Mayavadis, the impersonalists, they go off. They perform extreme austerities. Forget about it. I'm not going to stay in this room or this hotel or this anywhere in the city. I'm going off to the caves and the mountains and the Himalayas. And this way I'm going to detach myself by strength of will. No thoughts. Can you imagine? So there's a few, very few, who by severe austerities can rise up to the Brahman platform, meaning that they're actually experiencing Brahman. They practice yoga principles and everything. But it's like going up into outer space. Great. Now I can look down, I can see the earth, and take some shots, But how long can you stay there? You don't have any place to land. And so you come down and get conditioned again. Similarly, patantyado, the impersonalists come down because there's no ananda there. The only happiness is being free from birth and death, you see, and old age and illusion, and disease. Well, that's not bad. That's pretty good, to be free of that. But that's not positive bliss. That's just getting out of the hospital. Then what do? Do I sit on the curb? Oh, I'm free from disease. Whoa, that's cool. How long can you last? You see the problem? In other words, we're in a disease condition of life. Just becoming free of the disease is not our perfection. We want to become completely healthy and have healthy activities and thoughts and everything. Not that we just have no thoughts and no activities and see the problem. So that's what the impersonalists have, because they're afraid of having another body. But we're not afraid of having another body. We know that there's this, Haribol Joy, nice to see, that there's something called a spiritual body. We just learned in the previous verse, Brahmapanam Brahmave Brahmagno. If you're in your spiritual body, everything is spiritual. Nothing is binding you to the material world. It's all good, whatever happens. So that's the problem with these impersonalists. The demigod worshippers, they're also performing sacrifice, but it's ultimately a material motive, you see. And they're not recognizing that behind the demigods is Krishna. That's explained in the 7th chapter. He says that besides those who surrender unto the Vasudeva, understanding that he's everything, those whose intelligence is stolen away by kama, by material desire, kamais taista vriddhigana, many different kind of desires, they worship other gods. Prapadyante anya devata, tam tam nimasaya, controlled by their own natures, whatever the modes they happen to be in. I remember when I lived in Miami. You know, Miami is a big hub for travel from South America also. People who are coming into America, often they stop in Miami, you know. So we had a lot of devotees who were Brazilians, and you know, and they were working on books and things like that, for Portuguese books for Brazil. It was up in Miami in the 80s. We were working on Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, but there were others working there. So we'd hear so many things about life in Brazil, and yes, there are people who are in the mode of ignorance, go out into the forest. They have ceremonies, you know, drinking liquor, offering cigars, you know, to these trees, witches and ghosts and things like that. Worship in the mode of ignorance, and this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. Controlled by your own nature, you could worship anything. Worship some political figure, you know, who knows what. I mean, in the internet, there's probably religions born every day, and people are trying to get some followers to do this or that. So you can worship whatever you want, Krishna says. And if you really want to worship something, I'll make your faith strong. You see? He says, yo yo yam yam tanu bhakta, shadayachi tamichati, tasitasachalam shadam tamai vavadadhamyam. Whatever you want to worship, according to the mode of nature you're in, you really want to worship, then I'll make your faith strong in that. And you can worship a tree, you can do whatever you want. And whatever benefits you get, or you think you get from that worship, it's actually coming from me. It's all coming from me. But you're worshiping me indirectly, avidipurvakam. It's not Krishna Bhakti. And then kind of the wind-up verse is, andavatu palamtesham. Whatever you get in that way, which is material, is temporary. Antavat means has an end. Tadbhavat alpamedasam. And those who worship the different gods, you know, even up to Indra and everything, for material benefit, are not very smart. Alpamedasam means that it's foolishness. And then he winds up, Deva Deva Jo Yanti Madbhakta Yanti Mamapi. You worship the devas, or you worship the ghosts, or spirit, whatever you worship, you'll go there. That's where your mind is absorbed in, you're going to go there. You're not coming back to me. But those who worship me come to me. So as devotees, we are using our intelligence. What should we worship? Everybody's worshiping something. Most people are, worshiping their own body, and money has to be. You have to place your attention on it, and believe that you're going to get a benefit from it. This is kind of the bottom line for worship. Now, to worship Krishna is most intelligent, because ultimately you'll get the most benefit. I mean, there can't be a better benefit than going back to Godhead. I mean, think about what is it that we aspire for in life, in material life? To maximize our pleasure and minimize our pain. Even the animals and the insects are doing that, right? That's okay. That's natural. But we don't know the best way to do that. And so we do it on the material plane, and instead we get just the opposite. We maximize our pain and minimize our pleasure. I mean, because the whole thing comes to an end, and all our hopes for success here are dashed by death, and then we have to start all over again. So it's a huge mistake. So, but that doesn't mean that there's nothing to work for here, or nothing to worship. Krishna's saying, no, you worship me, you work for me, and if you come to me, you will really maximize your pleasure and minimize your pain. There'll be zero pain. There's no old age, there's no disease, no death, there's no time. Everything there is described. It's described. I'm not making it up. Let's listen to Lord Brahma. What does he say? Shya kanta padma parusha kalpatadavo dhuma bhumis chindamanaganimahi toyamamatam. He's describing Goloka Vrindavan. It says all these goddesses of fortune there, the gopis, and they're Krishna's lovers, and padma parusha kalpatadavo, all the trees are desire trees. You can go there, get whatever you want, offer it to Krishna, and take the remnants, And the walking, there's no walking. Everyone's just dancing. There's no talking. There's singing. The water is all nectar. Everyone is glowing with Chidananda. Chidananda Jyoti, you read about the Jyoti, which is blissful effulgence, which you could directly taste. There's all these beautiful Surabhi cows, and they're so happy that they're pouring milk on the ground. And then not a second passes away. There's only the eternal present. There's no change. There's no, it's all over. It's never all over there. It's just that each day is a new day of different adventures in relation to Krishna, a loving relationship. And that's our ultimate home. And Brahma says it's real. This is where we belong. And all of our acharyas. Now one can say, well, that sounds nice, but that's just a pie in the sky. I got to go make some money, pay my rent. See you later. No, this is revealed to us by the greatest towering intellects and yogis, the whole parampara. Srila Prabhupada and his spiritual master and Bhaktivinoda Thakur and all back all the way up to, these are real people, the Goswamis. They weren't just bewildered, They actually showed, like the Goswamis, living the most blissful life you could imagine with practically nothing material, literally. Not even a roof over their head, proper clothing, barely eating or sleeping. How could you get more austere than that? But they were enjoying more than anything. Gopi Bhava Rasamratabdala Hari. They were floating in this ocean of Gopi Bhava, the love of the gopis for Krishna. So the whole thing depends on our consciousness. That's where the bliss is. The external environment is simply a field by which we can either enjoy or suffer, depending on our consciousness. So this, he's now giving a series of verses describing different yogis, different persons performing different kinds of sacrifices. And he'll come to the point finally of saying, if you really want to know the ins and outs of the sacrifice, which is intricate, you have to find a spiritual master, someone who knows, who's already realized. That's a culminating verse, text 34, Tadvidi Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya. That we can't figure this out on our own. It's a great mystery, But luckily, Krishna, he sends his representatives, he comes himself as he does here, or he sends his representatives to exemplify the sacred life of devotion and to teach, because they're burning with compassion. They realize, these are all my brethren here. We're all related, but they're ignorantly acting in such a way that they're suffering like anything. So let me help them with knowledge and the means of realizing the knowledge. Not just the book, but also the life, a way to lead a life according to the book to realize the results of it. And that's why, this fantastical things beyond the veil, you become faithful to that. And you practice more and more, and you can realize it's true, that life isn't just, thank God, it's not just, ordinary material life. Who could imagine that that's all there is? Makes me shiver with fear. But I know it's not all there is. It's just a veil. We can get beyond the veil. All right, any questions or comments? Okay. So we'll end with a couple of little poems. Any requests? Something about the holy name, maybe? Madhura Madhura Metan Mangalam Mangalanam Sakalanagama Balli Satpalam Chitswarupam Sakadabi Padigitam Shadbhaya Helaya Bhagavadgita Tadiyet Krishna Nama. Of sweet things, it's the sweetest you will taste at any time. Of things that bring good fortune, it's the perfect paradigm. Of all the Vedic writings, it's the transcendental fruit, the very form of spirit, unalloyed and absolute. When uttered even once with faith, or uttered once with none, from birth and death it surely will deliver anyone. And in the end, it brings pure love of Krishna, life's true aim. So cast away all doubt and chant Shri Krishna's holy name. This is from Padma Puran. On that auspicious note, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.